I need the meeting book. That's what I'm missing. There it is. Yeah. All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I would like to call the March 15th, 2023 Franklin Township Board of Supervisors meeting to order at 7 p.m. In attendance is myself, Chairman Gerstenhaber, Vice Chair Donna D., and Supervisors Johnson, Torres, and Dowling. Also in attendance is Solicitor Guy Donatelli, Operations Manager Jeff Eastburn, Township Controller and Office Manager Melissa Ortega, and Township Secretary Stacy Hollis. And there are 5 members of the public, 9 members of the public, 10 members of the public. We're increasing as we go. So let's. I would like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. So I wanted to make a couple of comments. The first was the township. We had a very brief meeting with PennDOT to talk about and follow up with the 896 project. It wasn't formally on the agenda, so I just wanted to make a quick note about what the plans are for the stretch of road that's immediately south of the 890. We call it the 896 curve at Appleton Road, and the stretch just north of that same curve. So the current plan on the southbound side, the original plan had a concrete median in the center of the road, along with a slight widening of that road. This was the original intent was to act as a traffic calming measure, but because of the upcoming 3-way stop sign that's going to happen at the bend, it didn't seem to be very necessary. It would actually cause some hardship with some of the farm equipment, etc. So where we landed was we will simply leave the road as it is on the southbound side of the curve. We're going to just go ahead with the road improvements that PennDOT originally recommended, which was the widening of the road, widening of the shoulders. So there will be no change there. And then similarly on the northbound side, the change there will be, we just won't have a concrete median. We're going to leave the road again as it is with painted lines, which is how it is now. The primary reason for that is simply because the farm equipment cannot traverse that roadway with those medians. So, and it's not going to impact road safety in both of those segments. So just wanted to update that piece. And then there was another question that a resident had, because they're going to be cutting into folks' easements. They were going to be originally replacing any vegetation with crown vetch. We got confirmation that there's actually a new seed mixture that does not use crown vetch, which was deemed, I guess it's an invasive species. And very unpopular, so there will not be crown vetch in the original seed the new seeding package. I don't have any details on what's going to be in the new seed package, so that is something that we'll have to look into. But the crown vetch won't be part of that. Won't be part of that package. So that is just kind of a quick update on one of those meetings that we had. I would like to now open for public comment. So we have 2 public comment sections, one at the beginning and one at the end of the meeting. This first public comment may include any comments relating to tonight's agenda. Commenters must state their name, whether they are a township resident or a non-resident taxpayer in the township. If you do not identify yourself, your comments will not be included in the official minutes. Do we have any public comment at the beginning of the meeting? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll move on. So I'm going to, for those of you who are following along at home with the agenda, I'm going to make a slight change in the order. Under business, we had a discussion for the township building renovation plans. And at this point, we're going to begin the conversation there. I wanted to introduce Vicki Newton, who is the architect designer who's helping us with this process. First, I want to stress a couple of things as we enter into this discussion. We haven't made any final decisions. This is very preliminary. We are still really just opening up the discussion and trying to explore what's possible, and I think more importantly, what we must do. Through this process, we identified some deficiencies in the building where we must make some changes to bring the building up to code. So what we talk about tonight, again, is the first salvo in this process, and none of this is sort of the final plan. I think this is going to be a multi-meeting discussion as we move forward and decide what it's right for the building and for the township. So with that, I will hand it over to, is it Vicki? Would you like to start off the discussion?
Well, sure, I can. As you stated, we've created some floor plans that illustrate the existing conditions. We then went through a planning programming exercise, got information from the group of what happens in this building, what they would like to happen in the building in the future, challenges they have, whether it's space or technology. And with that information, and then concerns are being sensitive to budget. So, there's obviously plenty of things that can be done, but we really focused on what was needed and what was kind of the appropriate next level. So with that, what he's showing you is the proposed plan, turning the old storage into cold storage and taking the existing cold storage and actually opening that up and creating more of an office space. Right now, you only have one office and you have 2 workstations. So there is some additional office space needs. It would be nice to have a small meeting area that then could transfer over to be an office in the future, if that so happens. A place to have, a cup of coffee, some refreshments. The building is not to code as far as ADA requirements. It is accessible and that's great, but we needed to put in facilities to accommodate that. So you'll see 2 restrooms, one that's, being accessed in the office area, one being accessed from the meeting room. And then just opening up that meeting space, for just different types of configurations of the tables, whether we want to bring in an assembly of just chairs with the speaker, again, hoping for some other opportunities. We are keeping the original service where that comes into the building. So what you would see on the plan is perhaps electrical panels that are going to stay, some things like that. But all the surfaces will get a new treatment, new flooring, and all the walls will be painted. So some of those things will be made to blend in a little bit. So that's really kind of going through the plan. Do you have the elevation that you can share, or do you have some questions about the plan?
So Vicki, I thought we talked about the heating isn't correct, right? The heating system?
Right. The heating system can't really, it's barely supporting the space you have now. So bringing that up to code and specifically bringing fresh air into the building. It doesn't have any fresh air right now. So you have to, cool that and heat that as well. John Leslie from Delaware Engineering and Design is partnering with our office. They will be doing the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing design and documentation. He presented to a smaller group, just kind of, we have a drawing that you could review, but talked about how the area would be conditioned. There'll be zones. Trying to use the existing system is really just not, it's not going to really service any of the new areas, and it has probably given its life already. The systems there are pretty old. So he will design, efficient systems for the new space that we're showing.
Vicky, can I ask you a quick question regarding the system? Because I believe that system is maybe 6 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Then
because
I
I remember I was on the
misspoke.
board and from 13 to 19, and we put in a new system. Morano Plumbing and Heating put it in. So I just want to, is it really, I'd imagine they would have taken, is it just short on tonnage?
Yes, for sure, with the new spaces. And and I apologize that I don't remember everything that John shared with us that day. Because I know he did come to the site and he has done some preliminary surveys to understand what was there. So let me just maybe reach out to him and clarify that statement I just made. But regardless, the size of what's there, I'm surprised that he doesn't typically reuse it, but he's promoting, I guess, or recommending a different system that, really can't marry with that existing system, and it's a more efficient system to bring. So let me get something that we can share with you about that. Is there any other questions about the plan?
Yeah, so I made a couple of mentions of items that were currently out of code. One, can you talk a little bit about the items that we will have to address regardless of what we decide on a final plan?
Mm-hmm. So that being the restrooms, we have to provide an ADA compliant restroom, and by code, we have to provide one for each sex. We'll need to provide a drinking fountain that is ADA compliant, and that's one of the high-low drinking fountains. We haven't actually defined where that location is going to be. We want to kind of marry it around where all the other plumbing is. And, we'd like to put in a, coffee service kitchenette, but with that, it'll be at an ADA compliant height and accessible to a wheelchair. Any door that's put in there is going to be a new door that's 36 inches wide with a lever, ADA compliant lever, because none of the ones that today are compliant.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other questions or comments? Okay.
I just wanted to state that the footprint of the building stays the same. These improvements that we're making are just cosmetically inside. So we are watching the expenses really well by staying within the footprint of the original building.
Correct. And we also talked about we're in process right now creating the documents that we are going to work with the contractor to give you, probable cost, estimate for all of this work. And we're going to talk about during that estimation, doing some alternates. We would like a certain level of carpet in the meeting room because I think the acoustics would be nice. However, we could possibly save some money by using a more resilient surface, a hard surface, whether that's an LVT or something. We may look at the opportunity for different types of light fixtures. They'll all have in their, pluses and minuses, but they would all be LED, where you'll get the benefits of that electrical savings right away.
And so the next step in the process is you will present us with some options and some pricing.
Correct.
And
Mm-hmm.
and then what's the timeline for that?
Gotcha. So in the next 2 weeks, we're putting together the documentation, working with Delaware Engineering for the MEP systems. And then probably the week of April 4th, whether it's the 3rd or the 4th, we're going to schedule a visit with a contractor, walk through with the drawings. I want him to see the existing site conditions, and then it will probably take him 2 weeks to put together that cost estimate. When we have that together, that's what we will present to you.
So would the April board meeting be too soon?
Yes,
Yes,
because I don't
okay.
think we have some people on vacation, so I know I'm not going to get those drawings done until what is it going to be? March 31st.
Mhm.
So we schedule that next Monday for a site visit. And the contractor that I'd like to propose for this part of the exercise, I know he'll go out and get some real estimates from subcontractors. So with how busy everybody is, I know that's going to take a couple weeks.
Okay, so
Probably be good for your May board meeting.
May board meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, Vicky, do you think that when you present that, it's going to be like one of us going and buying a house? Like if we're trying to work through a budget, if we're going to, we have a couple of options for the floor, a couple of options for the lights, a couple of options for heating and cooling, and we can try to pick from those options and try to make it the best.
To your budget, yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
I don't know how many options you'll have on like a new or a supplemental heating system, but maybe there's some options for the roof, certainly for all of the cosmetics on the inside. And perhaps the roof type, but yeah, that's what we're trying to create.
Vicky, it's Stefan. Can you, in your best estimate with previous experience, can you maybe give a ballpark for how long this project would take once construction starts? And secondly, if I missed this from previous discussions, what the current staff will do during that period of time? Will they be working with the noise in the background, or is there a plan for that?
I think we talked a little bit about, maybe the staff could be remote. You'll get your most efficient pricing if the space is available and the contractor can, just really go right at it. The time frame I really can't speak to, because I don't know if there's going to be required any kind of foundation work. So no better when the contractor comes and sees it. That's his expertise, and it's really not mine. So I think whatever I would tell you would be wrong.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Donna, do you have any questions?
No, I'm fine, David. Thank you.
All right. Well, great. Thank you, Vicky. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
the introduction. And we look forward to talking to you again in May.
Great. The one thing that I just want to mention to the schedule, because I know that'll be important, is I know that projects are waiting for electrical gear, and that's just kind of going beyond everything else. So we may be able to kind of be ready to start the project, but we may need to take a more strategic approach when we're going to get all the materials. When can we order everything? Because they could get work done and then be waiting for a month for a new electrical panel or something like that. It seems that what product we're waiting for is changing. I know for a while we were waiting for a door for like 16 weeks. That's got a little bit better, but it's just, I want to kind of put that out there. We'll share that what's going on at the time, but that'll affect schedule a little bit too.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
You all have a good night.
Great. Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So David, do you want to go back to the minutes, or do you want to finish the Lexington Point thing? How do you want to handle
Let's
it?
just go right back to the minutes, and then
Okay.
we'll just go back to get back on our regular schedule.
Okay, great. So I'll take that one.
Mhm.
So we have the December 5th, 2022 minutes. I make a motion that the board approve the December 5th, 2022 Board of Supervisor minutes. Can I have a second for that?
You'd second it.
All right, thank you, Dawn. Any discussion? All right, am I hearing any? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, Treasurer's report. This is a monthly report from the Township's financial regarding the Township's financial for the month of February. For month of February and year to date. The Treasurer's report includes the following disbursements: the general fund with disbursements and transfers of $139,254.35. Park and Recreation Fund with disbursements of $1,336.03. the open space fund with disbursement of $5,608.46. The capital reserve fund with disbursements of $0, emergency services fund $0, and the fire hydrant fund had a disbursement of $580.80, leaving a balance in all funds totaling $1,888,635.65. I make a motion that the board approve the February 2023 treasurer's report as presented by Melissa Ortega. A second?
I'll second.
Great. Thank you, Jim. A second by Jim Johnston. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay. The motion carries 5-0.
Okay, I'd like to do the zoning officer's report. This report was compiled by the zoning officer and includes the number of permits processed for the month of February. In the month of February 2023, 8 permits were issued for $3,143.60 in permit fees, $0 in miscellaneous fees, $0 in recreation and open space, $0 in impact fees were collected, and 23 inspections were performed. We have no proposed motion on that.
Paul Overton's here to present the Park Recs and Open Space Committee or board report. Board
Thanks,
now,
Jim.
right? It's a board now, right?
It's a board. It's always been.
Yes.
So I don't need to turn on my own sound, right, Jeff? Just this one? All right. Can I share? So thank you, everyone. I just wanted to come by and give you an update on the Hampshire Bridge. It's been a few years in coming, and wanted to give you an update on the completed project here. And I am showing you a picture of the bridge. It's as designed, 50 feet long, 5 feet wide. It's got 3 sets of helical micro piles supporting it underneath. You can barely see them in the picture. They're pretty slim. Right there's one.
Oh, wow.
So it looks like it's floating, but it's actually got a set of piles here, here, and here. So they're each rated for 7,000 pounds each, so that's 14,000 pounds per support. So that's double what the engineer requested, but it's the smallest pile that the company made, so that's what we used. So I think it's a great project, and down the bottom, thanks to all the volunteers who came out, and I really feel bad. We took that picture at the end of the day, so we had 16 people show up, and I just got a few in the picture, so I apologize for all of you who showed up, and I didn't get you in the picture. You're so excited to get everybody going. I kind of forgot about the photos, but there's a few of the people, and thanks very much for them coming out. And just a little trip down memory lane here on the top left corner, you can see the machine used to drive the piles, and there's one hanging off the machine there. I don't know if you can see, but you can see the helicoil at the bottom. It's a foot in diameter.
Oh, yeah.
And the machine was donated to drive the piles, but we did have to buy the piles. The township bought them. So you can see the string line where the bridge will be. And this is where the trail was. So you have to walk down and then jump across the stream and everything. And then to the right of that is after we got the piles in and the timbers across the piles, we put the 3 telephone poles across. And there's the short one that somebody cut for me while the poles were laying in the parking lot. And we did splice in a 6x6 pressure treated timber at the end of that with a Dutchman joint here. So we did get center support on that short spot right there. Then the bottom left here is the group doing the decking going across, put in the 3x8 decking. We use 3-inch thick as recommended by the Delaware Parks group because it can take the load of a horse hoof, but also for resisting vandalism, people stomping on it or hitting it or throwing rocks or whatever. It's much more vandal resistant and lasts longer at 3 inches thick. And then the next day here, we only had about 5 people show up on Sunday, and you can see we're putting in the handrails. That's what they're doing here, is leveling up the handrails. And then here's the final product there in the last picture. And we put a head wall at each end to prevent the soil from washing down onto the bridge. So we have a head wall at either end with 6x6 timbers donated by Dave. The cost. I was given a budget of $9,800 for the material only, and I have that on another screen here. I can show you that back in October 2021, I think it was. I don't remember the date. When I applied for the grant, I estimated $9,800 excluding engineering. So I spent $6,800 if you exclude the engineering here. So it came in under budget. Some of that was the donations of the equipment I showed you, and we were going to buy the third pole for $1,000, but we got away with not buying that pole. And I had budgeted $1,000 for yard works to move the poles in place in case we weren't able to do it manually, but we didn't need yard works. We were able to do it manually. So that's where we saved $3,000. So then you can see the micro piles. And by the way, the township bought all these things. So the township has the receipts for exactly what was included in these things. The micro piles, the lumber from Delco Supply, they're the only ones who provide the 3x8 pressure treated with rough sawn surface so it's not slippery when it's wet out. And then DJ Farm Supply for fasteners, that's the bolts and screws and 40 penny nails, things like that. Lowe's for the larger bolts, and then Yardworks to haul the gravel that we used in the head walls to make the path. It was pretty muddy when we were finished, and we needed some millings. So they brought some millings down from the Hocking farm, and then the Hockings donated some fine gravel. What's it called? Rice gravel or something. Jeff refers to it as chips, so that it looks nice on top of the millings. And then Melissa did a great job digging out the LTL invoices for me, and I confirmed a $300 invoice, $330 or something. But I believe there was one more invoice that I could not find. So I have 1,000 in here, but it might be as low as 300. So my numbers might be wrong. That's the only one that I might be overstated. So if anything, it's $700 less than what I'm showing right here. Then the $6,000 of permitting prior, that's before I got involved when we had to, the township requested, it's John's here. John requested a bridge design, and then that wasn't working out. So he switched to culvert, and then got some permitting requests in through LTL for permitting. And the permit was rejected by, I think it was DCNR or Army Corps of Engineers. I'm not sure. But then we switched back to the bridge, and that's the final design was that last bit of LTL engineering. That's what I thought was 1,000, but it might be 300. All right, and then I received a Pico Green Region grant for $5,500. So if you take away that, the township ended up out of pocket $8,800 for the bridge.
Paul, it's beautiful. It's just a well done, nice piece of work for you and the team that put it together. It's just well done.
Thank you. No, it's a lot of support, and getting these timbers in place. We just had a small crew. Mostly, I just want to give Bill Scalish and Tony Laurie a lot of credit. We were out there a lot of cold weekends, just the three of us, because we were using machinery, moving these big poles. We didn't want any volunteers around to get hurt. We don't want the public in the way. So just out there, just getting these in place carefully, and then we could bring on the big crew to do the decking. So thanks to Tony and Bill. And then the next page, I'm not going to share, but it's, it's printed here. It's just a little bit more detail of a breakdown of the cost for each vendor. The board has that, if you guys want to see that.
Yeah. No, thanks again. This was, a great project, and it seemed to come together pretty fast once we started working on it. And there was a lot of volunteers. It would be nice to have a list of everybody to thank them, but there was a lot of people out there that day.
I bought them all lunch. There you go. And that
Beautiful.
I didn't put that on the expense report there.
All right.
Hey,
Thank
hey,
you.
Paul, could you tell us, like, if you had to split 50-50 on, or not 50-50, but the effort that you made in planning for this versus the effort in actually doing it, what would you say the time?
Oh, there's way more effort in planning, like just applying for the grant, laying out the posts, running the string lines, leveling up, deciding where it lands. And then, like, we had one of the audience members and early on was convinced we would have washout or this little 3-foot stream here. And so I would go out there on stormy days for months on end, taking pictures of the maximum flow, where we had water rolling down Chesterville Road and we had nothing here. So, I I put a lot of effort into it behind the scenes. Yeah, I'd say more effort went in before the building day.
Yeah.
All right, so am I still up? I'm supposed to do more things, or I have other parks recreation business I'm supposed to cover, I think.
That's right.
Okay. Okay, we're also working on a new sign at Bamshire. I didn't bring any photos of that, but the original sign we made, it was green and white and looks like the sign at Goodwin and the sign at White Clay Crescent. We put up a sign, the township did, I wasn't involved in it. The township put up a sign on Creek Road back when the Bamshire Preserve was first constructed. And the sign was promptly shot and run over. So afterward, we bought a small, simple metal sign that was just a cheap replacement. We figured if it kept getting shot and run over, we didn't want to spend a lot of money on the wooden sign. And so that metal sign was relocated to Chesterville Road where the parking lot was going to be. And so it's not in a very good spot. It's very small and it doesn't really, it's not really visible from the road because it's a one-sided sign. So it's not facing the road. It's perpendicular. It's not perpendicular to the road. It's facing. So the group wants to get more people there. That's an example there on the Goodwin Preserve sign. We wanted to get a sign like that, but Jeff got some quotes and it's very expensive to do that. I guess the guy's prices really went up since we got that one done. And this one's only single-sided where we wanted double-sided. But we thought it'd be nice to keep all the signs looking the same on all the preserves. And then, so Jeff's got a few quotes and we do have some restrictions on the words on the sign, as you saw there, stating who donated money for the preserve. My recollection is the township paid something like $10,000 out of the 600,000 or something, so we had a lot of good donations and we have to give credit for that. Anyway, I'm not here to pick a sign. I was just letting you know we're working on that right now. All right.
Yeah, I was maybe want to look at sort of sign off. For just bringing up the meeting room. Yeah, so one of the things that we were just talking about is there's a lot of different sign options out there. And I think we want to have a sign. So there's one of the thoughts, this was my thought, was I like your idea that, hey, all the signs, we should have similar signs on each park. But the green sign as they're set up, it's really hard to tell what that is. Right. So I wonder if there's a metal sign, I think that's at Bamshire now. It's not that attractive, but it has all the information on it.
Yeah.
And we put something like that at the trailhead.
Yeah.
Right. So you can actually sit and look and read it. Yeah. And then have a larger sign in front that says Bamshire Preserve.
Yeah. I'd actually propose putting this one on Creek Road because the preserve is over there and there's no notice that you're in the preserve over there.
Yeah.
So that would satisfy the requirement of a public statement of this. And then have the it just says Bamshire Preserve out by the road.
I always just drive by those signs. I think I just drove by the one, the Brandywine battle one. And I'm like, I wonder what's on that sign. And as you drive by on the side of the road, it'd be nice to have it. So as you walk by it, you can read it,
Yes.
So,
could you go open that up again, Tim?
Yeah, if you just keep the meeting book open.
One issue was, this sign was not meant for driving by, correct? It wasn't designed by marketing people. It was clearly designed by politicians who wanted to get their names on the sign.
Well, this sign is just going to say David Gerstenhaber across the front.
Can you show the other,
On both sides.
the brown one, metal one? Yeah. Notice one thing, Dave, on all our signs, I think one mistake was the biggest words are Franklin Township, and doesn't make sense. Like, we're not announcing Franklin Township. It should be the preserve.
Bamshire Preserve.
Right.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was an oddity. I don't know who designed the sign, but I wasn't around. So if we did something like this, it would definitely have a big name on top and name of the preserve.
Yeah. So,
all right. But
all right, perfect.
Let me move on. I don't want to take up your whole night here. The other one is another big project we would like to do. I shouldn't say big, but we'd come back for funding. I was supposed to have quotes by now, but didn't. Is that little machine I showed you a picture of? We want to rent that again with a blade on the front so we can do some trail work. I've mentioned this before. We had a tree come down on Bamshire Preserve Red Trail, and the roots took out the trail. So it's just kind of a mess where it's difficult to walk up. It's kind of steep and slippery. And we want to regrade it with that little machine. And then 2 other places in the preserve need to be regraded on the trail. So we'd want to rent that machine for the weekend. So I don't know, $400 or $500 or something. I didn't get it priced. Rent that and regrade those areas of trails. I'm not talking about creating any trails or moving any, just regrading what's there to realign it so that it's more walkable. It's just basically trail maintenance. Okay, so the next item is this open space initiative. So we are the PRO, Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Committee, and for the first couple of years of our existence, we've really focused on the parks, especially Crossing Park, you know, doing a lot of capital projects there. And so this year we were trying to do some more open space, and we have several new members who that's the reason they joined the committee, was to do open space work. So we wanted to move in that direction. And one of the things I've noticed is anybody in the township who owns more than 10 acres, including myself, we get notices from builders, home builders, Toll Brothers or Wilkinson, or solar panel installers and people like that. Especially 4 or 5 years ago, we were getting a lot of it. And so I always thought we don't do a good job of advertising that I see some of my own neighbors when they're in their older years and they're looking, you know, they're getting out of farming. What are they going to do? They want to move to Florida, or they can't afford to live on their farm because they're land rich but cash poor. We want to let them know there's other options out there than just selling to development, that you might be able to preserve your farm and stay in your home as a retired farmer and rent your fields to other active farmers. So we wanted to put a brochure out to those large landowners just to educate them that there's other options out there. And I know the Franklin Township Open Space Fund is depleted, and we don't in any way advertise that we're going to come out here and buy land or preserve land. And by the way, we don't support buying any land. We just want to preserve it, not buy it. But we thought we should at least tell them that we could help them identify groups and sources and grant funding to help them work through that process and maybe find a fit. So the idea was we would put out a letter to some of the large landowners that we think have good potential to get score well in grants. And not every property would score well, and we know not every homeowner is interested. So we would be selective in sending them out to the ones we think might have some appeal. And, you know, we've done things like this in the past, and it's not like selling Girl Scout cookies where you're going to get a hit on every letter, right? It takes years to make these decisions. You put an idea in somebody's head, and then a few years later, when their financial picture changes and they want to retire, they're getting older, or somebody passes away in the family, then just letting them know that was out there, you know, in the back of their head, that, hey, there's something else I could invest or inquire about. So Jeff's flipping through here that we were going to send this cover letter out to those few residents. And I don't have a list yet, but I'm thinking 30, maybe maximum 50 residents. There's over 100 parcels that are of the right size, but I know not all of them will be applicable. And then included with that was a frequently asked questions section here, just saying, you know, what is an easement? What is open space? A lot of people, it's kind of unfamiliar territory to them. And there's a lot of confusion. So we just wanted to answer some simple questions. And all these frequently asked questions, I want to thank Kyle on the Open Space Committee. She grabbed all these from various websites, Natural Lands Trust and other townships. And so she put together this group of questions, and written by, you know, real knowledgeable professional people. And then the last one was just a little brochure where we would leave on the counter in the office, or there was a suggestion maybe mail it out with the Franklin Township newsletter. Just kind of a general little brief 2-page thing here that folds in half, a pamphlet, so that if someone wanted to know something, we could at least give them a little thing to remember by, a calling card. So that was the idea. And you know, we've gone through the wording to be careful. Donna expressed our concerns that we don't want in any way imply that Franklin is going to reimburse you or in any way fund any of this. And so we were careful with that wording, so that we just say there's opportunities we want to educate you on, that there's no promise of any payments. Okay, I'll stop talking. Any questions?
All right. So thank you, Paul. And I first of all, I want to say thank you to the pro group and Paul for putting this document together. There's a lot of very good information in here. And I like that you point out the township itself hasn't we don't have an ongoing initiative for open space. And so one of the things that I'd like to see is, particularly with the frequently asked questions in the pamphlet, I like the idea of let's include this information in our newsletter, right? So the residents can have their information. The one thing that I do want to suggest, and I'd like to hear what the board has to say, is I'd like to have the pro have its own email account, right? So if you want to ask some questions, you can reach out to Franklin Township PRO at franklintownship.us, and then you can answer questions directly. But I like the idea of having this in the newsletter, particularly since it's not implying that there's an initiative. I think the one question that I have is on the targeted letters. I think my concern is that might indicate that we have this ongoing effort. And if we're going to do this, I think the board itself needs to come up with what that initiative is going to look like. So there's actually some guidelines for when residents come and call and say, hey, we want some more information. At least the board itself has a position to fall back on and say, okay, well, here's our internal strategy on how we evaluate. Because eventually it's going to be our decision whether or not to fund. So I think we need to have some form of strategy, or I'm speaking for myself here, or if we have a strategy at all. So I think we need to internally talk about, okay, well, once people, if we decide to send this letter out and people start inquiring, well, what's the board's position and how are we going to make decisions? So I guess that's just my statement. I don't know if I want. Let me just maybe open it up to the rest of the board, and then Paul, if you want to answer some questions.
Dave, I was reading the letter. A couple thoughts on the letter, and thank you very much for putting this together. One, I believe that the pro is doing a good job here, but I think that any correspondence, in my opinion, at least, this is my opinion, that goes out to the public should come from the board that represents Franklin Townships, as opposed to a subcommittee of the board. I believe subcommittees of the board, whether it be the HARB or historical, whatever, they're providing information to the board, and the board ultimately makes the decision on how to act in the best interest for the public. So I believe that, for example, a letter like this probably should come from Franklin Township, i.e. the board, as opposed to sincerely pro board member. The other question I have is that, and reading the letter, which is fine, it's just the one thing I do want to ask is some caveats, such as based on the quality of the land. We wouldn't necessarily want to ease a 15-acre marsh piece of land or preserve a piece of marsh. So just I didn't necessarily see that in the letter saying that it's the ultimate decision is also based on budgetary considerations, but also the quality of the land. Those are two.
You're absolutely right, and that's why I said there's over 100 parcels, but we would not send them to them because some of them just don't apply. Some of them have so many buildings on them already, they wouldn't be good to preserve. Others are swampland, right? There's not going to be any houses built there anyway. You wouldn't waste your time. Then there's some other ones that might be smaller, like 15 acres, but they're next to Peacedale Preserve, right? And if you got 250 acres and you can add 15 more, that's a pretty good fit if it fits well there. And then if you have a 20-acre parcel, but it's by itself and it's not very developable, it's not a good target, even though it's bigger. So there's so much variation in our properties. I would find it hard to detail it in that letter, but that's what we would talk about when they called. And if we say, oh, this is a flat 20 or 40-acre parcel, all tillable, plowable land, that would be a great ag easement. We'll put you in touch with the county ag program. Here you go. And that's how it would work. But if it was something different where we think of a conservation easement we do better, we would put them in touch with Natural Lands Trust or Brandywine Conservancy. We would evaluate what it is. For your first comment, the letter
Well,
from,
we're not done commenting yet, so can we do, the board, can the board finish their comments? and
yeah,
then
I
you
was
can-
trying to answer his questions, but yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, because, I don't know, does, Jim, do you want to comment first? Because I do have a few comments.
Well, I have a comment.
Okay.
That's why we need a designated vehicle. Because I'm not sure that staff, and this is what Donna's concerned about. Donna's concerned that if somebody calls, they're not going to have the knowledge about whether that piece of property is usable. So you can't, staff can't spend a lot of time on the phone with that particular person, you know, discussing that particular piece of property. So there has to be a qualified person. So I think the dilemma here is whether we have a website and or, as I discussed before, a phone, we have a phone number with, when you call, you dial 1 to talk to Jeff, the manager, and Stacy, and to Melissa. If you had a phone bank to we want to capture the people. We want to get the people with the qualified property, and we want to get it to the qualified person to be able to help them discern where they need to go with that information or how to get that information to them. So I think that's where the main problems are coming up. Is that property worth saving? Is that property something, you know, that goes to Natural Lands Trust or Brandywine? Or so I don't know. I think that's one of the main crux of our problem right now is we have to find a vehicle, and who sends out the letter and to whom. I think if we put it in our newsletter, it goes to everybody, which is more fair. You're not selecting, and it's who's to select who it goes to. So there's a couple things we have to, you know, weed out here to make the right decisions on how to proceed with this.
Yeah, I loved your gardening analogy. That was good, weeding out. You know, I've thought a lot about this, and because I've been with the pro, Dawn, you've been with me with the pro conversations about of getting this information to residents, and I think the goal of getting this information to residents is a good goal. More information that people have, the more that they know what their options are, the better it is. But I am still, the more I think about it, reluctant to actually have a letter being sent to a particular resident. And that's why, Dawn, I loved your suggestion, the idea of having the newsletter to be able to put the brochure with it, and we can talk about even the questions and answers with it and put that in with the newsletter. I think it solves a lot of my concerns in the sense that I do not want to come across to a resident that's saying you're being contacted because we've done an evaluation of your property and that we think it's worth pursuing some conversation with the township. I really would like this to be more positioned that this is information. If you have questions, you know, provide that email address that David suggested. But we will give you the contact information so you can talk to Natural Land Trust. You can talk to the folks that do the easements, and you have those conversations to see if it makes sense for your land. It's not about Franklin Township telling you whether it makes sense for your land. You have those conversations with these folks. But I don't want us right now cherry picking what residents get what. I would prefer to treat this as an information vehicle. And the fact that we have a newsletter going out in a relatively short period of time, I think this would lend itself to that. So I don't know, like I said, Jim, I think you're the only one who hasn't talked yet. Maybe you would have some comments.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Paul, I'll let you answer the original Stefan question, which will answer a couple of the things about
Okay, sorry.
first before I comment. I would
think
like to hear that first.
Stefan's only other question was he would prefer to it come from the Board of Supervisors, and I think that's a great comment. I don't have any problem with that. We didn't know if the board would want to send it off because then the questions might come back to the board, but us kind of being your front row interference, you know, to let them come back to us because we're more knowledgeable on it, we'd be happy to do that. But if you guys want to sign off on it, that makes it kind of more official. I think it's great. But I also think if like if the HARB or the Historical Society wanted to notify you of a talk coming up, they send it out as this Historical Society. They don't make the board send it out. And that's what we're doing. The Historical Society, HARB, is sending out information to the residents, and we're just sending out information to the residents. But either way, really, it's fine.
So you don't have any opposition to putting it in a newsletter first?
No,
maybe,
no,
and having.
I like the newsletter idea. I mean, I always thought just putting a flyer in the newsletter, but the questions and answers too would be fine. The only thought I have is in the world of spam where you're getting so much stuff, sending it to the people in the apartments over here, they don't really need to see this kind of stuff, but
sometimes there's people that know somebody that might need it. So,
yeah, I'm all for it. If you guys, I think it'd be a great solution. If you want to mail it all out in the newsletter, then sure.
And at least we'll see what we get, the initial response we get back.
Yeah, and one comment, I want to answer one thing from Dawn is that we would not want when Stacy or Melissa to spend any time on this. We just want them to take a name and number and just say, we'll get back to you. Just like if they call about the rules and regulations on taxes, they don't know, they just pass it to the right person. But if it's a phone number, like Dawn said, and they press number 4 and leave a message, that's fine too.
Right.
But the target audience in general is an older crowd, retirement age, 60, 70, 80 years old, and they're not going to join a Zoom meeting to find out. So I need simple method of contact. So phone number is best way to do it. Email kind of second best. Zoom, probably not.
Yeah. And there isn't anyone pressing right now that you're thinking of. So we can get together again as a board, make sure that we get the newsletter correct. We can even pass it by the pro.
Yeah, that'd be great. And that's correct. And remember, we're just trying to solicit interest. It's always up to you what the final decision is. Like if we bring 1 forward or 4 forward, it's you guys say,
right.
It's our job to put in front of you.
Yeah,
and
that was going to be.
If we're not getting anything in front of you, we're not doing our job.
And that was my next question. How do you? It's not in here, but how do you plan to present it to the board? Like when you're, what's the status updates?
So in the last 2 years since we've been together, we've had 2 or 3 properties come up, not from us soliciting, but residents coming to you,
right,
saying we want to learn more.
Okay.
And we evaluate them. One of them we said we don't recommend, and when we got preserved 15 acres for 15,000 or something, which was a pretty good deal. But
okay, so it would just be part of the regular pro meeting.
Yeah, that's
agenda. Okay.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, my biggest concern was trying to get any language out of there that might entangle the township. I think there was something in the fact that said, Franklin Township will make you whole commercially as part of.
No, there's no language.
It was.
Yes, there is.
There was something like that,
Could we view it right now? Because
I can tell you exactly where it's at.
We're gonna fix it.
Yeah.
Like we fixed it, but that was something where it's like, oh, that's too. Where was it?
No, it's if you say it says, can I sell instead of donate a conservation?
Yeah, so in that case, the township, along with either or both Chester County or state of Pennsylvania, will pay in total up to 100% of the appraised value of the developed rights affected under the terms of the easement. So that's right there. I was like, well, we can't have that because that implies that the township has a policy or an interest in doing that. And so I think from our standpoint, I would say I think Donna had suggested some change or something. It was well, there are options such as Chester County, the state,
right,
Natural Lands Trust, et cetera. And that's where we were like, well, wait a minute. This implies the township has.
It does say either though. It says township either.
The township with either. So like the township with other people will do this, not either the township.
No problem.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So we're arguing semantics, but that was the thing that caught my eye.
So I can agree to that. And by the way, we didn't write that paragraph, it was lifted. So if you want to tweak that, that's fine.
Yeah. That was just my only thought was when I was going through this, my thought was, okay, well,
great.
We don't have something right now. And if we want to have something, I think the board has to agree, okay, what can all of us agree to?
Right.
So,
right. And there's also wording in the document, and I've made these comments before, and I'll make them again before this goes out in the newsletter. It talks about a Franklin Township program. This is not a Franklin Township program, okay? That we don't need to say those words. We can just say, and this is in the beginning of the frequently asked questions. We can just say this document is here to address frequently asked questions about conservation easements. You don't need to talk about a Franklin Township program. So these are things, I'll continue to make these comments. I will continue to push back until
Can
we
you
get it
show that
right.
again,
and then
Jeff?
we put it-
That's me. Yeah, right here.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, Jeff. That's fine, Donna. It should be noted that the Franklin Township, yeah.
We don't have a
Um,
program. And there's another, and then the brochure talks
You could
about the
just change it
Franklin plan.
to land preservation applies equally to ag and farm.
Right.
And that's
right.
exactly what I did. So I
The
made,
purpose of the sentence is to just show that it's not all ag and it's not all conservation. There's both programs.
Yeah, so I think from an information standpoint, I think we're all in agreement with the intent.
Yes.
It's just we're trying to get the word. We don't want to end up in a situation where a resident comes and says, well, I got this piece of property and I got this, I want to take advantage of the Franklin Township program,
Yeah.
and then we have to say, well, we don't have one, right? So, I think that's where we're probably arguing over semantics
That's
and
fine.
trying to get this down, but I think the intent's great. This
Right.
is the getting people to reach out to these programs. That's great. And I think that's why we want to have this in our newsletter first and foremost, something easy to do.
Okay, so what's the path forward then? You guys are going to consider it and review it and wordsmith it to put it in the newsletter?
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Should I move on?
And Stacy and I have been working very hard on getting this newsletter pulled together.
Thank
I'm
you.
very proud of her. I'm glad to have her on board because we've been moving ahead really quickly.
Well, thank you.
I want to give credit to Andrea Roberts too. She wrote the cover letter. I forgot to give her credit for that. So
Thank you, Andrea.
it's not me. I'm not writing this stuff.
Okay.
It's a lot of good information in here. Thanks to the pro committee.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Paul, can I ask one quick question? And this is a Q&A. How long does easement last and who owns it in the future? When you are under Act, whatever that is, for 10 acres plus 316, 319, you are able to get out of it if you wanted to. If I had 20 acres and I'm in Act 319, I could get out of it, build 4 houses on there
Yeah,
by paying the back taxes.
correct. But I think it's the back taxes for 7 years. I'm not
Okay.
positive of the years.
Yeah, you might, but I guess my question,
There's a period of time when rollback taxes would be applied
Yep.
once the covenant is broken.
See that? He knows.
oh, my question here is, the question, how long does an easement last and who owns it in the future? To be eligible federal income deduction, easement must be perpetual. So there's no escape clause, there's no like Act 319, there's no rollback at all.
No, and that's what the last part of the sentence is. In order for it to qualify for a tax deduction, it has to last forever.
So if I wanted to put my property in easement and then I die and my children take it over and they say, you know what, we'll pay any back penalties and federal income tax breaks we receive, they cannot do that.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's the whole idea of involving a land trust. So for it to be a proper easement, and it's actually bad you're asking the questions, that means my Q&A didn't work very well. So we need to add one. No, serious, we need to add one that helps you understand that. But
Yeah,
Just-
want to make sure we're providing the accurate information.
Right.
Act 319.
no, it's a different program. And just real quick, it is, and a deed restriction is also a different thing. That's not permanent. That's very temporary. But this is permanent. And the way they make it permanent is they've compensated you. You've given away the right to develop and you've been compensated for it. And the land trust has to be involved because they defend that land in perpetuity. So you have to give them an endowment. So every year they send out a person to see if you've developed your land, and then they bring it to court if something's wrong.
Now, Paul, ag easements can be bought out of.
That's not correct. No, Chester County ag easement's permanent. In Maryland, I think it's a 50 or 100-year easement, but
Virginia.
not in Pennsylvania. It's permanent.
I think that if I may, the way I generally look at easements is if it's for the benefit of real estate tax abatement, then you can always make that up by paying rollback taxes once the covenant is broken. If you think of property ownership as a bundle of sticks, once you sell some of those sticks to one of the
Land trust.
land trusts, you no longer own them. It's not yours, and the responsibility for enforcing that restriction falls on the land trust or whomever else accepts standing to do that.
You accept money at that.
That's right.
So like, I guess to Stefan's point, like you essentially sold your land,
Standing, yeah.
right? And before, whereas with an easement, you're giving up property tax or.
Could I make one more comparison instead of his sticks, which I like, but in northern Pennsylvania, it's mineral rights.
Yeah.
If you have coal under your
Right.
property and you sell the rights to that coal, you can't get it back.
Right.
Like the new owner owns it. And you can't say, I changed my mind.
Right.
You've
Okay.
sold it.
But you've got the money, like the point. I think
You got
point
the
is,
money.
Yeah, you sold your land or.
Wait, somebody might donate. Don't give, they might
Right.
donate it. Half of our easements involve the donation for more than half the value.
Right.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry, I have to keep going. Some future goals for this year, just real briefly, is some signs in Crossing Park, both trail finding way signs and a healing garden sign, and Mr. Sachs Meadow. Greg's done a great job for us, and we want to thank him for that. And then we also talked about adding some equipment to the playground. We're talking about the most popular one was a zip line. I saw a new zip line in Westchester, right off 52, not too far from your offices, guys. So maybe you can take a trip on the zip line. Let us know how it is. But I'm just making the point that they are popping up in Pennsylvania, the zip lines. And then Dawn's going to work on the healing garden maintenance. We do have some funding from that donation to do some maintenance, but then the volunteers are what does most of the work. And then the tiny library and signage in the healing garden explain what the plants are. And then a connector trail between the soccer field and the lower pavilion. A lot of the trails down there don't get used because you have to walk on the street. And then we need a volunteer project to put gravel around the trees in Crossing that we planted last year before the grass grows up around them. And there's some tree tubes in Goodwin that could be replaced if someone needs a volunteer project. Okay, that's it. Sorry it took so long.
So Paul, just to comment on the trail, I think we haven't given any approval for that, but that's something you're going to present to us and we'll talk about it. I just want to make sure we're on the same thing.
Correct, Donna. This is just, I said this was our future goals for this year for the
Right.
pro.
Well, I know a
Yeah,
lot
and
of
this
stuff
would
were
be
happening.
This would be an asphalt connector to connect the asphalt walking trails, asphalt through the woods to the other asphalt. Because you see the walkers, and Donna, you're one of them, right? You walk down to the soccer field, then you get off the trail onto the road because the trail goes into the woods and disappears. So you want to get on. So instead of having people walk on the road, if we connect through the woods to the pavilion, you gain a whole bunch more trails. So we've increased the oval that people work on by quite a lot, just by a small connector. So that was the
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, I just think there's going to be some discussion on
It
that.
does not. It does not.
Okay.
The trail goes off into the woods and just kind of disappears.
Oh, thank you. Great update. All right, Donna.
All right, so the planning commission, so I see Paul's on. So Paul, would you like to give us an update? I know you didn't meet in March, but it's usually something always going on.
So, yeah, the historical commission, not the planning commission.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did the wrong, my mistake. I'm sorry. That is all on me. I apologize. Yes, it's the planning commission report. I apologize, Paul. I saw your name and I made the wrong connection.
But that's all right. I do have a quick update, just because we happened to co-host a historic talk up in New London this week. Karen Marshall, or last week, sorry, a week ago, just about. Karen Marshall spoke about her father's experiences with the 4th Infantry Division's 22nd Regiment, including his landing on Utah Beach. She gave a really nice talk. We had somewhere around 27, 28 people. I had a count and then a few more people walked in. And this is one that we, the Historical Commission, are paying for. So the next one, which will be in May, it will be the plan at the moment is for Gene Pisasale to talk about forgotten founding fathers. And that will be one that's being underwritten by the New London Area Historical Society. And I'll have more information on that as we get closer to that. And that's all I have at the moment.
Thank you. So Stefan, I apologize. I stole yours. Do you want to take mine?
Yeah, I noticed that.
I'm sorry.
Who do we have from the planning commission here?
There was no.
Okay, there's no report, no March meeting. That's it.
Well done.
Okay, now I'll steal from both of you. The Sportsman Association also had no meeting. Or are there any updates at all? No.
Yeah, there's no update since the hunting season ended in January.
Okay.
Go ahead, Paul.
I don't know if I'm allowed to ask, but from a pro committee question, we have all the signs along Franklin Preserve that are staked and said hunting in progress.
Yeah, they're coming out.
Yeah,
I just haven't-
before grass cutting season, we need to
Yeah.
get them out. Yeah, that's all.
I can get
Thanks.
it. I can get them myself this weekend. So
Awesome.
okay. Now it's time for the solicitor's report.
So unlike some other departments, I have some things to report.
Is his mic on?
Is my mic on?
There we go.
All right, thank you. Let's talk about MS4 and PennDOT. There are four updates that I can give you. I was not able to attend your March 6th. I was out for about a week and a half, and I was not able to attend your March 6th workshop. And I know that Andrew attended, and I can't really build on anything he may have said at that meeting. However, we've learned four things. Number one, PennDOT's plan that it needs to have approved was submitted on March 6th. So we don't know how long that plan is going to be reviewed by DEP, but it was submitted on March 6th, and they're hoping for approval. Number two, there has been some question, and we have spoken about this before, that in the event that PennDOT somehow plan is not approved, yet we have contributed our money to the sediment reduction. Can we get it back? And PennDOT has confirmed that we can get a refund if we do that. So that relieves and has allowed us to draft that into the contract, the contribution agreement. So I've done that. It's a simple sentence. And I was encouraged to hear that. Andrew reports to me that there still is in fact time for townships to sign on to this program. There was some talk last time we were here that the window was closing, the window's opening, and I think is open, and I think we're going to get through the window. As far as a three-way between myself and Andrew and Daryl, I've asked all of them if they're available early next week. I was not able to schedule it this week. I just couldn't do it. I've asked all three if early next week works for that. Andrew has said it does, and I'm waiting on Daryl's response. So I'm encouraged. I guess one other thing, some of my partners work with other townships and are doing similar contribution agreements, albeit in other watersheds. And there's nothing about our progress that is different from theirs. Some of them have progressed a little farther, but the issues that are being encountered by those townships are virtually the same as the ones that are being encountered by yours. So if misery loves company, we have plenty of company. I'm happy to take any questions that you have on that, but those are the developments since the last meeting, and I really can't, I apologize for not being able to make your work session. So I can't build on that. But that's where we are now, and hopefully I'll have something to tell Mr. Eastburn next week after we speak at length with PennDOT.
Yeah, so Guy, this is Donna. So I'm glad to hear that, because when we brought this up to Andrew, he said he was waiting for that introduction. So I think that's going to be a key milestone in this whole, I don't want to call it a saga, but this whole MS4 adventure we're on. It sounds like, as you gather more information from PennDOT, that there is a lot of there's a lot of promise, right? But there's also the ability that if things don't work out the way we would want them to, through no fault of anyone's, if DEP doesn't approve their plan, there's a way out. So I know we haven't officially voted yet, but it seems like this is something that we would want to consider very, very seriously, and don't want to lose that opportunity. So if you get this 3 years together and you have a good interaction, I would expect Andrew to come back to us, and maybe we could move forward on this.
Sure. And I don't want to speak for Arrow, but I think they still have some work to do on the various plans and approval of our various plans.
Right.
But as far as working with PennDOT and getting into that program, I'm encouraged, and I'm encouraged enough to say that, again, and I've said it before, and there was some reluctance, and I respect that, but it would not be a bad idea to send up a contribution agreement, perhaps in the upper left-hand corner, Franklin Township version 2. Ask Daryl, what do you think of the additions that I've made, and see what he comes back with, because I would include the protective language that I think that I think is agreeable to PennDOT in these contribution agreements.
Yeah, seems reasonable. And do we have a cost yet? I don't know if we're at that point where they say it's going to cost X amount of dollars. I know it wasn't much, but I don't know if we have.
It's not, and I leave those, I leave that number blank because I'm unsure of what it is as well.
Okay, great. All right. So David, as the chair, is there something you have to say so we give God the okay to do the next version of the contract?
If you give me a head nod, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any specific word, but yeah, I think we need to keep proceeding with this process.
I'll do that. Yeah.
I think at least where we're at with PennDOT and we're still waiting for DEP approval, as frustrating as that is, I don't know if the board agrees, but this is the only piece that I actually can wrap my head around is how this is going to kind of work. Because the next part, which you weren't, I guess, which you weren't here for, was kind of outlining what the engineering firm is going to do in the township, which is I'm going to call it the inventory of what are the BMPs and it was an extensive list, an extensive process. And so that's, I think, where I'm still trying to struggle about how much of this is necessary. Why is this happening now? Versus, it's kind of like, here's a pile of stuff your township has to do. By the way, you have 30 days to do it, and so that's kind of where I'm a little confused as to how we got here, where all of a sudden we're kind of behind the 8 ball and we're doing a massive amount of work up front.
But the Elk Township buy-in with PennDOT, they aren't approved either, right?
Well, I have a grid that was provided to me by another engineering firm that came to me second or third hand from lawyers that I know. And that's what that grid indicated.
Right.
But I can't vouch for its accuracy because I don't know how it was created, and I'd rather be ignorant than wrong, quite frankly.
But like Dave said, that seems our safest option in that direction so far.
I agree.
The other option, the white clay, is what we're more worried about.
And we need to do both. That's the whole thing. So if we can secure the one that seems kind of like, okay, at least we're not crazy.
Exactly.
I mean, it's something realistic so we can put our arms around. And it is a smaller piece, right? So the big work is going to be the other part. That's where thank God for Andrew. We're gonna have to work very closely with Andrew and try to figure out a plan, because that's the big part of our permit.
Right, for this PennDOT piece, that's the only thing, that's the only option we have, right? We don't have another one. We don't have choices to go through. This is it, like for.
Correct, unless you want to develop your own
Yeah,
plan, your
that's
own
not-
project.
We haven't even started thinking about that, so.
Guy, with regards to DEP, have we, and if not, is it because it doesn't make sense? Have we reached out to them either through Andrew or yourself to let them know that we are aware that, and we are making progress? Just like a friendly, here we are, we're not ignoring you.
Right, they know we're interested, that we're not ducking it, and that we recognize it needs to be done. Yes, absolutely, in writing and orally.
Yeah, and Andrew showed us like a timeline, I think at the thing where the last notifications to DEP were made. So.
And he's out there working on all those right now, right?
Right, he will be at the next workshop meeting with an update.
He's out there working on them now, so.
I hope so.
Well, so.
He is.
So if there are no further questions, I'll move on to Romanet 2 and 3. There has been no development on the Act 167 or the Mount Olivet Road projects. All of those documents are completed. They're accurate. They contain the language that I think the board wants to contain. I have not gotten them advertised yet. So the delay is in my office, not here or with anyone else. So I'll take responsibility for that. I had told Mr. Eastburn very confidently as I was leaving the last board meeting, put that on the agenda because we're going to get that done, and I was not able to. So I will remedy that.
So May.
Yes,
Right?
April. That's correct. Right. And we have new folks, a new person in our municipal department whose primary responsibility is advertising and recording. So I'm going to get a little support with that. We're going to get a little support with that. We're now 50 some odd lawyers, but we needed support in other areas, and we have that.
How many lawyers does it take to advertise a? Sorry, sorry.
None if you have the proper staff.
It's my nature.
Guy, I'm not being smart. I didn't hear directly what you said. So this will be advertised in April, or will be advertised?
No, you'll be able to vote on it in April. I'll advertise it so that the vote can be conducted officially in April.
Okay, great. Thank you.
My partner, Lexington Point, my partner Vince Pompo has more of a history with that development than I do. And I have asked Vince to get involved with that and speak to the individuals involved. And he's agreed to do that. So I think he spoke initially to Mr. Eastburn a day or two ago, and
Correct, and he's reached out to Mr. Corbett.
right. So I've asked for a little support on that project because it has a long tail, and I need some help getting my hands around it.
Yeah. Decades of long tail. So we have a motion on the table. We will have a motion on the table regarding Lexington Point, actually right after we're done talking to you, regarding the escrow release. Is this something we're prepared to pass? Is this a motion we're prepared to pass, or do we need to wait for Vince Pompo's update?
I'll answer, and then Mr. Eastman can feel free to weigh in.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think that the engineer's report, I've read it. He's comfortable that the improvements have been made. There's still $1 million and change. If I'm reading it correctly, there's well over $1 million remaining in the escrow account, and I'm comfortable authorizing the release.
Okay.
And Romanet 5 other, I do have two matters that I want to speak to the board in executive session after the meeting, if that's okay. They're very brief and nothing good news, but I want an opportunity to talk to you folks about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So David, do you want me to go next? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, so I think the next it's on the next page.
Right.
Yeah, and it's the escrow release for the Lexington Point wastewater treatment plant.
Right. So I can make the motion, and we can have a discussion if we need to have one. So it says, I make a motion to approve Lexington Point WWTP and drip disposal system escrow release. Number one, in the amount of $525,651.50 as recommended and outlined in ACOM's letter dated March 5th, 2023. Could I have
Is
a
it
second,
March?
please?
March 8th.
March 8th, right.
Oh, okay, so, okay, okay. Do you want to read it again? So let me correct that to be dated March 8th, 2023.
Yeah, I'll second.
So thanks, David. So I just a comment that I'd like to make. This has been long in the making. The company Lexington Point has not always been the most easiest one to work with, and they may have the same comments for us. So it is important, Guy, to hear from you saying that you're confident that it's okay to release this money, because there has been a bit of going back and forth. There's been delays. Sometimes things that are promised to be done aren't always done. So I'm going to take you at your word, and if you say it's okay, and I think Stan's saying it's okay, then I'm not going to stand in the way of it.
A quick question, where is this? There's a 1.867 roughly million in escrow. Do we know where this escrow money is?
Well, we have it, right? It's in the bank. Isn't it ours? Don't we hold on to it, Melissa?
I don't want to speak for Melissa, but I was informed that going through 5 years of statements, there's no record of this. So I think before we release it, we need to find it.
Is Melissa there?
I'm right here.
There.
So there's no record of this month. What are we releasing then?
So yeah, what money are we releasing?
I went back 5 years trying to find this money that they're speaking of, and I can't see anything yet. So
All right, then we can't talk about. Then we can't do
I've
this.
been doing records and bank statements to try to figure out where the money came from, what account it went to. I don't have a paper trail of it right now.
So I'm a nay.
Yeah, I think. Well,
This is
I would
new
draw the
information.
motion. Yeah, I would draw the motion.
Holy cow.
So I have spoken to Mr. Eastburn. If we can't, from a treasurer's perspective, confirm the existence of the fund, we're either doing one of two things. We're either stroking a check and returning money we have, or we're removing liability from a bond or some form of other financial security, which will reduce the face amount of that security. So if you can't tell us what that is, I would recommend tabling this until we get confirmation of exactly what the financial security is.
Do we have a time frame that Melissa can look at for more information? Is it?
I've gone back 5 years and I don't see any of these numbers in any of the bank recs whatsoever.
But it might have been before that, right?
But
So
yeah,
that's what I said.
I just saw these numbers going, like I just got this information a week ago. So dealing with the auditors for our current, I've been trying to pull records and.
Hey, Melissa, can you put your mic on so we can?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think we have to think of the standpoint too. I believe it's more likely in bonds. I realize we need to,
Right.
I know we need to confirm it, and that's fine. but
And that's
I-
the other thing I thought is like letter of credit bonds and,
Right.
but as financial and an escrow account and Pliget, our bank account, I cannot track any of this money.
Yeah, no, I think it's a bond too. I think we have to take a different approach. Yeah.
14.
There was a letter of credit.
Okay.
That's sure. Way back in my.
If the management of Lexington Point
Yeah.
wants this released, they'll let us know where it is. We can just give them one phone call tomorrow, right?
Contact.
Oh, yeah. I just haven't had time by the time I signed the letter. You know, I had Monday, Tuesday and I'm looking at these numbers and I'm thinking.
I think they can wait 1 month.
All right, well, thank you, Melissa, for pointing that out.
Yeah. Well, we get together again the beginning of next month right? But so it's like 2
April.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's 2 weeks. So we gotta figure out where this is at. And I don't know if Stan can help us or you just contact Lexington Point directly, but I'm pretty, it's somewhere. We'll find it. It's somewhere. We'll find it.
So with that, we conclude business. I now open for public comment. This public comment can include any comments on anything attendees may want to share. Commenters must state their name and whether they are a township resident or a taxpayer in the township. I open up to public comment. Sure. You can use that mic or that mic.
Pull right up here. Like one.
This microphone's on, yes. My name is John Auerbach. I've been a Franklin Township Supervisor for 10 years, from 2002 to 2021. I've owned the same 50-acre property since 1978, so I've been here for 44 years. I'm very familiar with the open space program, past and present. We'll offer some historical information relevant to tonight's discussion and a recommendation for the board to consider. I can tell you this is a complex program. It has some controversial elements, especially related to financing and use of public money. I've attended a number of the Park and Recreation Open Space Committee meetings, and I have some understanding of their current proposal. I heard more of it tonight. My recommendation to the board. With consideration to the complexity of acquisition of open space land, I recommend that the board place a moratorium on any related action this evening. Going forward, the board can carefully and thoughtfully develop a written policy that clearly defines the manner in which the board will engage open space proposals of any characteristic. The policy will provide a strategic approach to measure and manage all new proposals. It will simplify any debates as the proposals can be measured directly against the policy. First of all, there are no compelling reasons to rush into this program, so there's sufficient time to develop a policy. And I'll make 2 points about that. Chester County Planning Commission recommends an open space goal of 30%, a value that recently increased from 28%. Currently, Franklin Township has preserved 34% of its 8,282 acres, just 4% above the Chester County Planning Commission's goal. Second item, average housing growth in Franklin Township has been 6 units per year since 2017. A low growth rate compared to the 36 units per year in a period 1995 to 2006. No, that's way back, but it's important. The collapse of the subprime mortgage market in 2007 and 2008 drastically reduced housing growth in Franklin Township. With consideration to the state of the current economy and the likelihood of entering an extended recession this year, housing growth should not be a concern going forward. These comments are directed at the board. There's 3 comments. Finance and land acquisition is one of the most expensive processes that the township can engage. Be very careful with any discretionary and uncommitted funds. The American Rescue Fund's $475,000 will be spent this year, and there's no more of this type of funding on the horizon. Secondly, compliance to the MS4 stormwater permit is upon the township. Capital costs for new facilities are unknown at this time, but are expected to be significant. Many years ago, about 2015, I believe, I inquired to our engineer LTL about a cost estimate and projection for MS4 activities. After a thoughtful delayed response, they advised $2 million over a 10-year period. That's an annual cost of $200,000 a year, not a minor budget item. The third item is emergency services have the potential to grow significantly. Our providers, West Grove Fire Company, Avondale Fire Company, Avondale Fire Company, and Medic 94 are struggling to recruit volunteers. The volunteers provide our essential service and are facing financial and family pressures that are unprecedented in prior years. Replacement of volunteers with paid staff will escalate our costs to a level that we would have to make some drastic changes in how we pay for these services. Local officials, Chester County and the Commonwealth are very concerned about these volunteer programs. Additionally, closures of many hospitals have significantly increased the cost of emergency service. So be careful with commitments going forward. A few misconceptions I've heard recently. Franklin Township is not spending any money on open space. Not true. In a prior progressive proactive open space program, 2008 to 2010, Franklin Township engaged in a long-term loan with a principal of $3.5 million at 2.87% interest for a 32-year period, using the dedicated open space real estate tax as collateral. The payoff date for this obligation is January 2039, with the loan service payments required for another 16 years. Just to note, typically townships do not engage in loan obligations exceeding 5 years. Existing loan service funding by Franklin Township is significant and ongoing. The dedicated funding to support the program was initiated in May of 2002. Board of Supervisors enacted Ordinance 2002-9, which authorized a referendum be placed on the ballot requesting an up and down vote in the general election, November 2002, 21 years ago. Following provides the key elements of the referendum. Do you favor an imposition of an additional tax on real estate at a rate not to exceed 50 cents per $1,000 of assessed valuation to be used to acquire real property for the purposes of securing open space benefit or benefits under the Open Space Lands Acquisition and Preservation Act or under the Agricultural Security Law? The ballot initiative was approved by voters. 885 to 378 was unanimously approved. Its dedicated tax is significant, represents 20% of the total annual real estate tax of 2.49 mils per thousand that's collected by the township, not a minor budget item. The annual cost of the open space loan service costs exceeds the dedicated tax by about $17,000 to $18,000 a year, and the shortfall must be supplemented from the general fund. Therefore, Franklin Township is committed to a large annual expense for open space land acquisition for the next 16 years. The program essentially stopped in year 2011 as a result of insufficient funding to continue the program, as all dedicated tax revenue is committed to the loan service. In 2011, a plan was proposed by the board to find additional revenue for open space by imposing an additional 0.5% increase in the earned income tax. Excuse me, and eliminating the 0.5 mil real estate tax. The proposal was configured as a referendum, was placed on the May 2011 and 2011 November ballots. Referendum was defeated in both elections by a large margin in the second election, 846 to 593. The board's objective for the new revenue was to borrow an additional $5 million to continue an aggressive open space program. January 14, 2011, Franklin Township Supervisors press release describes the details, the objectives in detail. And the primary purpose of preserving land is to limit the amount of available land for residential development. And a key measure of success is the number of housing units interdicted by taking land off the development market. As a resident, I clearly recall the sentiment 2002, when the real estate tax referendum was approved by voters. Clearly, housing growth was on the mind of residents at that time. Prior to 2002, housing growth in Franklin Township from 1995 to 2002, at the time of the referendum, was 337 new units for an average growth rate of 3.62%. Note the growth rate now since 2017 was 32 units with a growth rate of 0.32%, about a tenth of what it was then. So what happened? Why'd that happen? What provided the wealth that fueled the rate of that rate of development? State of Delaware changed their banking laws, providing very favorable economic conditions, and most U.S. banks moved their credit card operations to Delaware, creating an enormous demand for housing, and new jobs were created, and for the new jobs created. In addition, the subprime mortgage market provided low-cost cash until it crashed in 2007 and 2008. Related to the period after the end of the aggressive open space program in 2010, Franklin Township lands continue to be preserved. Since 2013, an additional 591 acres have been preserved. Only the Stolfuss property, 109 acres of farmland, required financial support from Franklin Township. All others were financed by private owners or other governmental agencies. Here's the current status of Franklin Township land preservation in 4 categories. Preserved land is 34%. It's 2,862 acres. Developed land is 42%, which is 3,538 acres. Land available for preservation is 12%. It's about 970 acres. And it's unsuitable, there's a 12%, which is 1,041 acres. And what I mean by unsuitable is various disqualifying features for the land: too small, steep slopes, wetlands, water features, driveway access, among many other. Point I'm making is you don't have to engage in a proactive program. A more reactive approach is more advantageous, as the township's negotiating position related to costs and conditions is much stronger. Contrary to the Land Conservation Group, the terms of real estate deals are negotiable. The appraisal price is a starting point for negotiations. Inquiries by landowners have typically come to the land conservation organizations in Chester County. I can say 2 examples in 2017 when I was on the board. A 55-acre farm was presented to Chester County and in turn to Franklin Township. Ag easement was the issue. After significant consideration, the board was prepared to engage 45% of the ag easement value. But before the board could fully act on it, Chester County provided all the funding for the easement, and the land was preserved at no cost to Franklin Township. A 25-acre property was presented to Chester County and Franklin Township. After consideration, the board did not engage. Subsequently, the landowner preserved the land at their own expense. Here's a paradigm relevant to this discussion, and I'll say it twice because it's important. The value of open space to the community is proportional to its scarcity. The value of open space to the community is proportional to its scarcity. An example would be a small green plot, open space in Delaware County near Philadelphia border. This has high value to the community because there is little available in the area. Contrasting that, I'll provide 3 points. Within Franklin Township, there is a large amount of open space. The 34% I noted before, 2,862 acres, parks, preserved, farmland, and other. Secondly, a white clay preserve, which is 3,212 acres, is located almost immediately adjacent to Franklin Township. And thirdly, Fair Hill Preserve in Maryland is a 5,633 acre natural resources management area located a short distance south of the Franklin Township southern border. Here's the key learning. A slower, more proactive approach to proposals is more effective and provides a better posture for the township. Note the 591 acres that have been preserved with this approach since 2013. Prior to an aggressive proactive open space program, 2008 to 2010, acquired some low-value land to put the township in a long-term debt position. Let's not start down that path and repeat poor practice. That's the end of my comments.
Thank you, John. Any other public comments? Online, do we have anybody online that will have, that has public comment?
I gave Jeff a copy. Jeff.
All right, not hearing any, I make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting at 8:40 p.m. Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, I'll mark that down. Stefan wants to quit early. Any discussion? Not hearing any discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. All right, meeting is adjourned.